Good afternoon and welcome once again to another episode in our series, A Story to Tell. Today we have with us Mr. Peter Hibbert and he'll be sharing his experiences with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Hibbert. How are you doing?
I am fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. Let's just start with your early years at Jonestown Primary. Any memorable experiences there? What age you started, and you go from there?
Well, I attended Jonestown in the 70s, Jonestown Primary. And my memory was that was the heights of the political fraction between JLP and PNP.
Yes.
And Jonestown Primary sits predominantly in a PNP stronghold, but then you have the surrounding areas of Rima, and it was just once a family setting, and then the political fraction just break up family, and it was very, very serious. But in terms of a primary school, I believe Jonestown at that time was one of the premier primary schools. I remember the principal, Mrs. Somers, and she was just a mother to a lot of children. And Jonestown is nothing to what it is compared to now. For me, those days, Jonestown was more like a residential area. Just a whole family setting where people would just see you and care for you as a child.
Yes.
So my memory of Jonestown is really that it was fun for me. My sister and I attended Jonestown Primary. She was ahead of me. Primary school, it isn't like what it is today in terms of having competition in, you would have what you'd call house, but not like primary school against primary school in track and field or in football. Primarily, I remembered I was a part of the speech team, and we would enter in festivals, and we were very successful in that area.
And you grew up with your mother and your father, and you were born in Jonestown.
No, I was not born in Jonestown. I would have to say, well, Jonestown in itself fall in what we'd call Trenchtown. I was born at Victoria Jubilee to Gladstone and Anita Hibbert. Basically, in terms of family setting, I grew up in a stable home.
Yes.
Unlike a number of children from the community, I had a stable background, and my father had a stable job. My mother was basically a stay-at-home mom and cared for us.
It was only two of you, yourself
only
and
two
your
of
sister.
us, my sister and myself.
So you went through Jonestown, you went to Common Entrance, wasn't so successful. Tell us about that experience and you moving on to a higher school
Well,
of education.
in terms of Common Entrance, I failed my Common Entrance, and I think it's mostly out of fear. In fact, I think it was probably the Sunday before I broke my right hand, which is what I used to write. And I still went to the exam, but for me, it's really participation. My sister at the time was more settled, and she went on to high school. I failed my Common Entrance. I'm not even sure if it was the first or the second time, but there was just this phobia of me and exam. And when I left Jonestown, I attended Denhamtown for a year. But out of this situation, I was kind of developing a reputation of my own as this fast youngster in the community.
Always running about the place.
Always running about the place. In fact, I remember, we used to take off our shoe and put it down and play. I remember this particular incident. Bigger guy for me took up my shoe and was running with it, and I just run him down and took my shoes from him, and but I developed a reputation in the community where people would say, you see that little boy, him fast, and I would be just passing and them engage me in a race. But as I say, at the time we never have primary school championship.
Yes.
So I went to Denham Town and continued with the repetition. Now I was at this secondary school and they had competition. So while I was in 7th grade, I was the top guy there. I was part of like the name for the school, and I did very well. I remember this person, John Carlos, who actually introduced me to Glen Mills. And I ended up at Camperdown, and there began my running career.
The Sprint Factory.
The Sprint Factory.
So tell us about your years at Camperdown, transitioning from one school to another. How was that? Was it simple?
Well, I wanted this thing so badly. There's something in me that is very, very competitive. I have this competitive edge. And even now as an adult and where I'm at, I know that you have to tailor these things. So I went to Camperdown. I didn't see anybody too big for me or too fast for me. I just had this urge to do well. I quickly settled down academically because I just was afraid of exam. But I settled down, started school, and when I went to Camperdown, I had the junior quarries. So right away it was competition.
Yes.
And there was another youngster, I remember, both of us vying for this like a one space, and I had to prove myself. I believe I got in based on the fact that I could do academically. I was a little better than who was presented to the headmaster. So I was interviewed and was accepted. But then I was very serious about my track and field. And this is about 1977. And while attending Camperdown, Glen Mills and I, apart from being my coach, we became very close. I guess he saw something in me and you know, was just nurturing that talent. So in 1975, I participated in boys champs as class 3, where I came second in the 100 meters, second in the 200, and we actually won the relay. In fact, that year Camperdown won a shield for the most relays won, points won. And I, at that early age, Glenn allowed me to go on the podium and to receive it. And from there, I'm now in an environment where I was so motivated being among, you know, the junior quarry, and everything was about Donald. So I had that early competition. I had to vie for my spot. I could not afford a track shoe at the time. I never forget, you know, there's first time butter shoes with a rubber toe.
Yes.
In fact, I had to keep in my toe because the top of it went.
Yes.
So your foot would jump out of it. And, you know, in fact, when I represented Denham Town, I went there and I ran barefooted.
Yes.
And I won, but my foot was blistered, and you know, John Carlos just tell them this guy, and the story, you know, was that. Anyway, while I was at Camperdown in 1976, which was my first year in class 2, was a very instrumental year for me in a number of ways. Then I got attracted to football and was trying to play football at the time. Glenn got very upset, so I used to sneak out and go and play minor league.
Yes.
And then I got involved in Coles football, and at the time I believe the coach wasn't really looking at me for participation that year.
Yes.
Being my first year class 2, so maybe he would take things seriously in year 2, in my second year. However, when I left Coles training, I would attend the track and field training. I remember we used to train at the stadium field at the time because Camperdown didn't have any facility for training, so we trained inside.
That's in the National Stadium?
In the National Stadium. I believe part of that was, Glenn was a part of in sport. Well, a number of schools. It was not stringent as it is now, where you could, so we trained there. I remember we used to run from the stadium up to the Mona Dam as background training and come back. And I remember one particular time, like Glenn wanted to pick me up. I was struggling coming back, and I said, no, coach. Because there was just something inside of me.
To keep going.
Yeah, and I said I was going to prove to him that I am the best thing, you know. So 1976, football finished and we into track and field. And I remember one thing that really stood out for me is that we entered 4x200 meters class 2. And I remembered now I'm meeting up on some guys who were in their second year. So they basically, they are expected to win or to do well. And I remember I got the baton about 7th on my leg and I found myself running past everybody.
Yes.
So things start to unfold.
Yes.
This, you know, look like I'm good after all.
Yeah.
And Glenn, you know, took me up under his wing and, you know, and from there things propelled. That year in particular, I remember, no, as an athlete, you would be projecting what you want to do, and you look at records and the people before you. In fact, when I looked at them, I kind of gauged myself to say how well I would do.
Yes.
And you had people at KC like Maurice Beecher, who then had the record for the 200 meters at 22.1 seconds. And in my final track meet for the season, we used to have development meet just before champs. A week before champs, I ran at 200, I ran 21.5, shot at the champs record.
For Beecher.
For Beecher, and that was not at champs, you know, at a development meet. So, you know, the place, I guess now they would say I'm on drugs or something, but in those days...
They didn't have drugs in those days, man.
So you know, I went to champs, I got hurt, I would say somewhere leading up to champs in the final week, and I could not even stretch. But I believe Glenn Mills, in his ingenuity and being a genius, I still participated, heavily bandaged, and I could not even stretch to touch my toes. So when it was warm-up time, I would go out very early and just keep jogging. Yeah. You know, no stretch and stuff. I went through the preliminaries pretty easy in the 100 meters. When I ran the semi-final 200, I broke the record. I ran 21.9. And you know, it was just a buzz on the competition. I think Calabar won champs that year, and Camperdown might have come second, but the thing about it was that this was this rivalry between Camperdown, KC and Calabar. And they had an athlete, Richard Wilson. In fact, I ran with him in a development meet in a 300 meters, and I beat him, and I realized that I was kind of getting to be the favorite. So I won the semi-final. Leading into the final, I won the 100 meters final, and in the 200 I won, but I broke the record again. Yes. So I ran 21.8, and I was, in my whole aspiration and ambition, I was gauging myself, you know, what the big boys, I was running what class 1 boys was running at the time. So that was a successful year for me at champs. I won the 100 and 200, and we won the relay. And I went to the Carifta Games in Bahamas in 1976, which I also won the double.
Sprint double.
The sprint double, the 100 and 200. Very, very, in fact, most of the guys I ran with went on to Olympics and stuff. And, you know, in fact, Carifta was a little challenging for me. I remember Glenn wasn't a part of the coaching staff, but he came there. We were running on the cinder track, which is something like dirt. And I'm afraid of dirt. I just don't like running on dirt. And I remember in the finals, I got lane 1 in the 200 meters, and I was furious because
you should get a better lane based
I
on
had
your
the fastest time. And, you know, anyway, I think I was better than the field, so I won the 200 as well. So I took the double at Carifta and came back, and, you know, in my second year in class 2, there was a lot of aspiration, me myself setting myself goals, and somehow I had this hamstring injury and it never seemed to go. So in my second year in class 92, I actually won the 100 meters and I came third in the 200. Very disappointed because even from a young age, I usually set myself very high standards.
Yeah.
You know, and very competitive. I don't want to lose. I don't like losing. So I would train harder than everybody else and stuff. But in my second year, there was challenging.
So Glenn Mills went to Dintil to do some coaching there. How did that work? And how did you adjust based on the fact that he was coaching you before?
Well, like, Glenn never really left Camperdown. Glenn is all Camperdown. Even to today, I don't think, even with his busy schedule with races and stuff, he would, you know, from time to time, help wherever and whenever. So Glenn going to Camperdown to Dintil, I believe, was maybe, I don't think it's economics because he's not that kind of person. I believe from my humble position, Glenn wanted to prove to the world what he could do. And Boris at the time would present a challenge to beat Samuels. That's my analogy of it. Getting on the map and, you know, just to show the world what he could do. For me, the adjustment came in the fact that, you know, the time we used to spend together was less in the sense that, but, well, driving to and fro, we had a lot of discussions. So you could say it was a benefit then. And he was a father figure to me, so we would discuss various issues and aspect of my life and family and the whole thing of my career. But in the leading up to champs, I don't know, something went wrong and we got disconnected in the sense that I was training. In fact, I remember I was at this very ground at my court, training while Glenn was in Dintil. So I don't know, maybe my preparation suffered. And evidently I wasn't as successful as my first year with all the expectancy. And I believe at the time, nobody in my age group could beat me. I was the first athlete in Jamaica to run under 22 seconds as a 15-year-old.
Yes.
So, you know, I was on top of the world. I felt unbeatable. And but then there seemed to be some distance that crept in between us in terms of my preparation. So leading into class 1, things just seemed to a domino effect. Things never improved in terms of my injury, and I continued running, but my class 1 career was short-lived. With all the expectation of this young man, with all of this talent, coming out of Camperdown, being touted as the next Donald Quarry, and all kind of, in fact, I remember significantly, I won the 200 in 21.8 seconds, the finals, and broke the record. I remember Colin Bradford went to the Olympics in Canada and he ran 21.8 in the finals.
So those were Olympic times you were running at the time.
The competition would have made the difference, but you know, just time-wise, it was significant. I was getting a lot of attention from other schools, and people just from around the world would contact me, and you know, other schools would come up with the idea. I would be at school at Camperdown, and people come and say they hear that I want to leave Camperdown, and I want to come to their school, and nothing of the sort.
Tell us about your scholarship offer that you got and how that played out.
Well, I got an offer in my final year. At the time, a lot of the onus was left on me to contact the school and contact the coach, and things just weren't falling in place. In my final year, in the year 1980, things just weren't going good for me. I lost my father, and a lot of pressure came on. Glenn was, you know, taken up with other young athletes, building his career. Then there was Raymond Stewart who came on stream, and, you know, I think that affected me tremendously. Maybe more than people would really. It's the first time I've really spoken about how it affected me. Because, you know, when you're getting all this attention and suddenly the attention switch, and, you know, as a youngster, to deal with that would be, you know, quite an issue for me, losing my father, and, you know, things.
How did he pass away, though?
That was a devastating time for me. My father was admitted in the Kingston Public Hospital, but from time to time he would have this, he had this kind of sickness which was like a seizure, and his jaw would just lock up, and, you know, from maybe a couple seconds or even into minutes that he would be just stuck in a position. And nobody seemed to diagnose what was happening to him, and he ended up in Kingston Public Hospital. And I remembered significantly there was an island-wide blackout power cut, and my mother would go there morning and evening, very, very diligent. This particular day she could not because of the island-wide blackout, and so she didn't go. And the next day we understood that my father was being prepared to come out of the hospital. The next day when she turned up, my father passed away.
Just like suddenly then?
Just passed when we were all expecting him, you know.
To be discharged.
He was the binding force in the family. He was the strength. He was everything. And he just passed, and I don't know. My mother is a very strong lady. I don't know how she coped, but she held on. And then after that, my mother would get into odd jobs, and, you know, just to ensure that
that must be difficult, being stay at home and him being the sole breadwinner, to she now starting to make some income for the family.
Right, you know, to my dissatisfaction, but I guess she had a decision to make, and she wanted to ensure that, because there were times when my father seemed to be away, and my mother would just hold things together, because while it's just my sister and I, my father had other children outside, older siblings, but my mother was just this loyal lady, and, you know, strong.
So did you feel at any time any pressure to take on the lead role in the family, seeing that your father had passed away? Probably stop going to school and start working, and, you know, to fill that gap.
For me, I knew that there was something about Peter Hibbert. I grew up in a volatile community, went through the political war and all of that, and my friends were getting involved in gangs and all, but that never attracted me. There was just something about me, and the good thing about it was that my friends recognized that. I remember a particular instant, we were on the road, and this elderly lady came up and said, "Boy, what you doing with these boys? You're not supposed to be with them, you're different." And they were so upset and angry, but it was just a fact. But they themselves would also, when, you know, as boys getting into wrongdoing, they would tell me, say, "Don't come, this is not for you." You know, we'll
so
check.
Even they realized that you were different?
Even they realized that I was different, and they would protect me. You know, I was, you know, coming from the community, this big runner, and then in those times going to high school meant stuff, and, you know, they just looked up to me, and I displayed this kind of leadership. I was always in leadership. I was a Boy Scout, and track and field robbed me of my Boy Scout career. At age 14, I was a Queen Scout. I was sent away to Suriname to represent Jamaica at age 14, and, you know, so because of the training every day, I could not go to troop meetings and stuff, so track and field became the thing. So I was always kind of in leadership, kind of within my peers and stuff. So it was really, but we held things together. We were looked up in the community, I would say, boy, the Lord just provided. I don't know where it came from, but it happened.
So you left Camperdown and you went on to work?
When I left Camperdown in 1980, I went to Scotiabank to work. And there I met my wife. Marriage of 34 years.
Yes.
We celebrated our anniversary the 10th of November last month. And I met my wife. Never knew then, but as we worked together, we got closer, and somehow it would appear that we fell in love.
It would appear so.
It would appear so.
I thought that is so.
We fell in love, and you know, we also started to have children. We got married, and we were separated from branch. I used to work at a particular branch, both of us, and then I was transferred to another branch. I guess the bank may feel that for a wife and husband working in the same branch, you might rob the bank.
Oh my God.
No, in those days, working in the bank, everybody was a thief.
Yes.
You were scrutinized, we would have inspection, and you know. So she at the time was the head teller. So maybe the Lord had to move me to have this lady bossing me around, you know. So she was the head teller then, so I moved on to another branch, became the head teller. But then when I went to the other branch, I had aspiration. I used to relieve on desk in a higher position and was looking for promotion. But then there was this culture in the bank about years of service. And while I was getting the job done, they promoted persons who had years of service. And I said to myself, I have to leave the bank. And I had this saying that if I stay in the bank and continue counting people money, I won't have any for myself.
True.
So I said, boy, I have to get out of this place. And you know, I was still involved with Camperdown, and I remember going away with the team, pen relays, because of the relationship with Glenn and myself. I was still around, and so while I was at Scotiabank, I started to train again, but then I didn't have that kind of drive and the supervision, so I was doing stuff on my own. But then I had a young child, and you know, I had the responsibility of wife, and you know, things just had to be.
Took a different direction.
Different direction. The only thing about my life was that I knew for a fact that I would succeed. There was just something in me. So, you know, all my friends went away on scholarships, and people were migrating. And I remember I had this girlfriend, and she was, you know, kind of encouraging me to run away. And I said, no. I'll stay and make it in Jamaica. And I started working on that. I left the bank saying I'm not going to work for anybody again, and I just wanted to start my own business. When I left the bank, I remember I left there with $5,000. At the time, $5,000 would translate into like 1,000 US. I remember putting $500 on it and buying 1,000 US. And I went away and bought some stuff, came back and tried to move it. That failed. And my wife and some in-laws tried to get me to work in some banking sector again. I said, I'm not going back. And you know, I did some stuff, accumulated funds. I remember I used to tell people, you know, you can do this and make money and do this, and then one day something struck me. I said, these men must be saying, why you don't do it for yourself and make money, you know? So that just changed my life, and I went out now and I started Sports Plus Limited. At that time, Glenn Mills was a part of it. In fact, you know, it was him and myself, he had invested in it, and then, you know, after a while.
Sports Plus is a retail.
Is a sporting good company that primarily deals with, the concept was to deal with team sport, because we didn't have a great location, but as time went on, the name became an household name, and people would just turn up. We ended up, in fact, I moved away from track and field because Glenn was in track and field. People knew me from track and field. So it would be easy to sell that market. So I
Yes.
went into football.
Yes.
And at the time there was an issue in Jamaica. We couldn't get proper playing shoe. As soon as a football boot came on the market, the studs would break up, and obviously they weren't making shoes for our poor condition. I remember the first set of shoes I sold, in fact, for $1,100. I went to Boys Town and I gave Carl Brown a sample for a player to use, and I watched the people train, and I would cross my finger that the studs wouldn't break.
Yes.
And you know, it held up, and then we just started to transform the market. Again, I had some connection with Adidas through Glenn Mills, and we developed the store, and we started now bringing down products that was more suited for our hard ground condition.
Yes.
And things just blossomed into what sports. So Sports Plus became the leading sports store. We had a branch in Montego Bay, one in Portmore, one in Maypen, and Kingston and Ocherius. So we were spread out to service the market. And we also sponsored the Manning and the Costa Cup. In fact, we brought that concept to ISA, this whole idea of sponsorship, and we saw that schoolboy football was a product, and we got into sponsorship, and I started to have player endorse products, and you know, I was first in offering products to players, and you know, that market grew, and we just became a giant in the business. And I also, in the 1990s, I got involved with Arnett Gardens, helped develop the product you see today.
Arnett Gardens Football Club.
Football club. I would stay away. People would believe I was more football than track and field. And I believe Arnett Gardens at the time was one of the first local club to get a major sponsorship. I brought Adidas on board. I spent a few years there, then I left. I just always seem to be moving on the go.
Can't keep yourself quiet.
Can't keep quiet. You know, even Sports Plus, I wanted to hand it down to somebody because I had other vision.
Yes.
And I did a little player management because I was involved with Ricardo Fuller, was instrumental in him going to England and securing a contract and all of that. Wave Lines was, you know, I mentored those athletes.
They came through Camperdown as well, and you still had that relationship.
Still had that relationship. But, you know, I want to tell you that my contribution to sports nationally, it wasn't confined to players from Camperdown. I work with some very big names, gave them start in their career. Maybe they wouldn't know about it, or nobody would mention it.
Yes.
But I wasn't doing it for highlight.
Yes.
And I think I picked up this from Glenn Mills. He's a man that gave selflessly.
Yes.
He had his one vehicle, and he would pack it up, and he would always ensure that a youngster would have food. So that kind of rubbed off on me, and I took up that. People would come from all walks of life just asking for help, and I would help, you know, in various disciplines, cricket, football, everything.
So tell us about your involvement in national football and the administrative part of it.
I got involved in national football based on being a major supplier in the industry. In fact, on our road to France, I single-handedly got sponsorship for the Reggae Boys based on an involvement I had with a company in the States by the name of Lanzera, who was later bought by an Italian company, Kappa. And they were the official kit sponsors. So, you know, in terms of going to a World Cup and to be involved in international football, you need a kit sponsor.
Yes.
So that was significant for the Reggae Boys. You know, I was able to secure that deal, and, you know, from time to time, Captain Borrell and Horace Reed and myself, we would fly into Italy and, you know, upgrade whatever we had leading up to the World Cup. I became also a manager. I was assistant manager to Creston Boxill, who was then the manager for the senior team. And I was also the the manager for the under-23 team, which comprised, you know, a lot of our stalwarts who ended up going to France. They are Nandelo, Fabian, Gregory Messam, all of those came under my wing. And we had a relationship with these players because we would camp on a weekend. And at the time, the JFF didn't even have money to camp the team, so I would fund the camps. And so we were able to keep these players together. Even when René Simoes came here for a short while, we continued with the format of weekend camps, and you know, it just grew. So in terms of national football, I at one stage was the assistant manager for the senior program and also the manager for the under 23, which is the team below the senior team. Again, as I told you, I went into club football in Arnett Gardens and for a while helped them. And then that was in the 90s, and the early 2000s, well, I would say about 2002 or thereabout, I was approached by Donovan White to help Waterhouse. And he asked me to manage a team, and I told him I didn't have that kind of time, but if it was a cooperative effort, I would consider it. They had a crisis at the time with players and not able to get along, and I came in and we were able to solve the problem. The team got running, and you know, while I was there the first year, in the second year, I became the president. You know, I laugh about this situation. In my first year, when I turn up at the gate and I say, I'm the manager for the team, the people would lock the gate and say, the manager inside already. You know, but as time went on, I had a wonderful time at Waterhouse. It's one of the most exciting community I have known. They are just so passionate about their football, and when football is going on, the violence in Waterhouse is at its lowest level.
Yes.
I came into contact with some really influential, kind-hearted individual persons while working at Waterhouse. I work closely with Bruce Bicknell, which is one of the directors of Tankwell. I remember, you know, I said to myself, if I had the backing of a Tankwell or Bruce Bicknell, I couldn't lose the league. And while he was looking at it from a different angle, I was very serious about my whole leadership, and you know, so we were able to win. I think that was in 2006 we won the championship, and I walked away after that. And I had serious challenges. In fact, as you know, I used to shoot pistol for Jamaica, and I went in a situation where I could be in serious confrontation, and that didn't lead me away from the club. But later on, you know, executives, and I don't know if I had their support, but one thing I know, I had the support of the chairman, and that was what I needed. And with my tenacity and competitiveness, I decided I'm not going to fail.
Yes.
We won the championship. In fact, in that year we won the women's football. We went to the CFU championship. We just had a host of junior competition title. The club was very successful, and I would say, you know, there was just a great team. It's just that we weren't seeing eye to eye, and the support from Tankwell was fantastic. So we did. So I walked away from Waterhouse, and I left it. In fact, I had a discussion with an executive, and I told him, this means more to you. So I just walked away, and the reason I believe I was able to walk away was where the Lord was leading me. I got saved at Pentecostal Tabernacle, and this was just a burden for souls.
Yeah, I got involved in evangelism.
Serious evangelism. In fact, I remember talking to a brother, saying, you know, I want to go on the road and I want you to accompany me. And I went there one Wednesday, On the following Wednesday, I came back. Him say, I thought it was a one Wednesday. I said, no, man, it's a every Wednesday. And we started going every Wednesday. Still, it started to go every day. I don't believe that there's a street in Western Kingston that I have not evangelized. I've been to every nook and cranny, homes, and there's just a beautiful relationship with the people, and today we still share that kind of relationship, you know. You know, the members of the community would call me up, Brother Peter, if they want any kind of advice and stuff, and that was just beautiful. I just believe that I was fulfilling my purpose, knowing that there was, you know, so many persons who never had this relationship, and I found this love and just wanted to share it. So there are times when we are in the market, in Coronation Market. There are times when we are just on a street corner. There are times when we are at public hospital. There's time when we just go into homes. I've seen where the Lord has done tremendous things in person's life. There's a particular two incident that stood out, you know, and this is why I'm saying God is an awesome God. No respecter of person. You know, we prayed with a man in Coronation Market who had a spliff in his mouth and received the baptism of the Holy Ghost.
Yes, just like that.
Just like that. There was another incident where this young man was sitting on the street corner and this young lady was braiding his hair. So we said, we'd like to pray, but, you know, I asked her to stop so that we could reverence the Lord. And she said, boy, if you can't pray, you know, while me I do it, you know, no pray now go on. I said, no, man, we'll pray. But the moment we started to pray, she stopped doing the ear, and everybody closed their eyes. And there was this young man standing on the side. And, you know, we prayed. And the moment we say, amen, this young man standing on the side took out this long knife and rushed the guy and started stabbing. Stabbing, and the knife broke. And everybody on the street saw what was happening. And to my dismay, the man never even get a scratch.
What?
And the people say, you're lucky the people them pray for you. So I know God is awesome. He does some extraordinary things, some things that will just blow your mind. The man didn't, and the knife broke. The man never even get a scratch.
Seriously?
Seriously. You know, those are incidents that, you know, I see ladies who, they used to live degrading lives, you know, prostitution. And I watched the Lord turn them around. And for me, that brought about joy. And, you know, even in the incursion, the whole assembly, we went down there with food stuff to reach to our membership. And, you know, it was just an awesome experience. And today, when I reflect on those things, I really miss them. But I'm just want to fulfill my purpose. I want to reach people.
Let's backtrack a little. We spoke about your mom earlier, but we know that she got ill after a while and had passed. Tell us about that little experience.
That was another devastating blow in my life. By this time, I started my family, and, you know, but my mother came down with breast cancer and succumbed to it. But you know what was significant? I remember my mother used to go through her chemo and stuff, and that lady, you never know when she's in pain. But I knew she was, you know, having excruciating pain. At times I say, I wish I could bear some of the pain for her.
Yes.
She was admitted to St. Joseph Hospital, and I believe if she had any control any at all, it's like the Lord would work it is that I went to New York, and it's when I went away my mother passed. And I, you know, came back, and, you know, we laid her to rest, and it's just my sister and I, and we are so close. She's living in New York now, but that bond, you know, there's nothing that ever came between us, you know, except for one day I remember I had to steal her stew peas.
What?
You know, we leave your stew peas overnight for the morning, and I was going to school, and I wake up early, man, and deal with the stew peas and gone. My sister cried for months. But we had fun, and you know, it's just the both of us, and just life was just so, you know. So while developing business and growing in business, I got distracted along the way, but I knew that the Lord, I tell people that my life story, I didn't read it in a book. You know, it's no fairy tale, it's real thing that I experienced, you know. And my wife, she's a very loyal lady, and she, you know, stuck with me during my little foolish times, and while I run up and down trying to do stuff, you know, she was just there, and I really appreciate her for that.
Tell us about your involvement in pistol shooting. I know you had represented Jamaica on some occasion in the past.
I got involved in pistol shooting from an incident, actually. And I used to walk around with, you know, like a lot of Jamaicans walk around with gun, licensed firearm, but I don't believe they are competent.
Yes.
I believe I was one of that kind of person. Anyway, the way my incident unfolded, there was little or nothing I could do. I was at the establishment one Saturday, and a group of men came and tried to get me involved and distracted me, and the next thing I know, I was looking in the muzzle of a gun, and they took away my pistol and ran out of the store and fired a shot.
So they only came for the gun?
I would believe that.
So they didn't rob like this?
Yeah, I mean,
no
that
money.
was insignificant, what they wanted, you know. So I believe, at those times, I believe men wanted gun more than, oh, they have access now to guns, so, you know. So they actually shoot one of the employees in his hand, and it was just unfortunate. And then it came to me that, boy, if you're going to carry a gun, then you need to be competent. I got involved in the GRA, I became a member, and started investing a lot of time and money in shooting. Shooting is a very expensive sport.
And time consuming.
And time consuming. People see those shots you see in fire and in practice are real bullets. And they are costly. And I would spend hours, even away from the business, I would spend hours at the range. And after I left the range, I would go home and assimilate, you know, scenarios and practice all kind of situations. So I went away on several trips representing Jamaica, won several trophies, and, you know, was making a name for myself. In fact, Speedy Murdoch and I were a shooting partner, and, you know, and you can see the progress that he has made. Very talented young man. I don't know if I would be at that level, but you know,
who knows?
Who knows? But then when I got saved, in fact, there was just a policy I had. I don't believe you should take your gun into church if you're going to worship God. And this was me in my ungodly state. I never carried my gun inside of a church. You know, and then when I got saved, then the gun became more cumbersome than anything else. And I recognized that I had to make a decision, because what people must realize, when you carry a gun, it is kill or be killed. So it means that you have an intent to take somebody's life. And you can't say you can shoot a man in the foot, because you never know what the scenario is, and you might have to defend yourself.
So you are also involved in dog breeding and dog competition. Tell us about that and how you find it, and some of the misconceptions that are out there involving dog and dog breeding.
I'm involved, well, I got involved in dog breeding as a part of something to do other than, I'm always involved in activity, physical activity, but what the dog presents for me is a challenge. And there's a lot of work involved in dog breeding. I breed what we call the American Bully, which there's a misconception between the American Bully and the Pit Bull. Their ears are cropped, and most people believe once a dog ears is cropped, is a Pit Bull. Is a much more docile dog than the pit bull, which is a higher drive dog. And pit bull was predominantly bred for fighting, you know, dog fighting and stuff. So I don't know, we don't have much of that in Jamaica if we do. And I believe pit bull is actually being distinct because people want lower dogs, wider looking dogs and big head dogs, and that's not the pit bull look, you know. And I did it because it was like preparing them for Olympics.
Yeah,
that
competition.
Is competition. So that was my part of, you know, the knowledge I gained from conditioning and nutrition. So I would bring that to the dog game, which have made me very successful in terms of competition. I've won most of the local bully competition and obviously, you know, envy. The thing about it is that it's not the formal community, so you have to interact with all kinds of people. And I use it to reach people as well. There are persons that I have led to the Lord based on just dog involvement. And I'm trying to live a life that would be exemplary to them, you know, wanting to know this God that I know. You know, so I would tolerate a lot of discussions and stuff. I mean, some of the people I interact with, had it not been for dog, we would have no connection.
And you won a few trophies for
several,
the local dog competition.
Several trophies we have won. I have about 100 at home. You know, right now, you know, in fact, today is a dog show, but I'm not going because I am starting what we call a registry in Jamaica where the dogs are registered. In fact, all of my dogs are registered in America. While in Jamaica we might look at it as being illegal.
Yes.
I have papers for these dogs registered in America.
Tell us about your involvement in the music industry. We know you also had a little stint in that era. Let us know how that went.
Well, music for me, I got involved because of some friends who had money and wanted to be involved in the industry. So I took on the role of getting these local artists to record them. And several artists I have recorded, Garnet Silk and Gregory Isaac. I remember when I gave Gregory the money and I went to the studio and waiting on him, the engineer said, you give Gregory the money, him not turning up, you know, it's a wrong thing you do. Dear and behold, Gregory Isaac came and, you know, he said to me, my youth, your money small, you know, but it stay along with me. So we recorded Gregory and, you know, it was just fun. A legend like Gregory, you know, Triller U, a lot of these upcoming artists at the time, you know, even Tony Rebel at some point. And I did it for friends, and I ended up at Greensleeve in England, discussing, you know, royalties and stuff, but it wasn't really my business. I was carrying out a function. So it was easy for me to walk away. And then again, even at that tender age, the stigma and stuff, you know, maybe if I had stuck with it, I would be a millionaire now. But I walked away because it wasn't really my investment. I was doing it for friends and great time, met a lot of the artists and all the studios at the time. I would visit them and it would, but you know, my wife was getting a little way about it because it kept me away from home and hours I would be in studios and, you know, so I walked away from that.
Are there any other business ventures that you went in?
Well, for some, I was in player management. I would work with Phil Graham at the time, who was an agent, and I was like his local representative. So for some time I earned from that. Again, I walked away from that. And you know, people hearing me talk about walking away might think, you know, this man is strange, and you know, but I've done it all. You know, been there, done that, and it wasn't about money, it wasn't about fame. I think I had a couple of that. I've been to places in the world, and you just had all of that exposure, but you know, to know the Lord is something else.
It seems as if a defining moment in your life was when you get to know the Lord as your personal Savior and you started to look at things differently. How important is a relationship with God
Well,
with you?
sometimes people hear this whole thing of being born again and might take this thing lightly. And I used to hear about scales dropping off your eyes, but I experienced those things. My life started when I got saved. I became a better husband, a better father, a better human being. You know, I could love and, you know, didn't have that envy. It don't matter what you have. You know, I could, and if I say I love you, I truly love you, and, you know, this forgiving heart, because I grew up in a situation where it's a dog-eat-dog situation, and I didn't know. And the Lord just, you know, through progressive revelation, the Lord have just brought me to a level where, you know, I'm so happy. I'm still working. He's still working on me. But there's so much more that, you know, to learn the mysteries of God. But life started when I got saved.
Based on your intense involvement in sports, it would be natural for your kids to probably be involved in sports as well. Right? And if your children involved in sports on a competitive level, or
well, when they were younger, I believe my children rebelled, thought that I wanted them to be like me. One of my son, Raji, was champion boy at prep champs, but when he went on to high school, nothing. One of my other son went to champion, so he played football, but he went on to university and he had to make a choice, so he obviously the book and stuff. But so none actually excelled or was dedicated, you know. And for me, I would want to be involved, and I can be a hard taskmaster, because the only way to get it is to work very hard. So they used to rebel. Maybe now, being a better father, a better human being, I would be able to dispense it a little better.
Tell us a little about your children. How much you have, and where are they now and stuff?
Well, my boys are big men now. The last one just finished USF. He did major in finance, and I have a daughter that is not my wife, and she just finished her master's in applied psychology, and she have a degree in criminology. She's, you know, basically, my children have done pretty well for themselves. I've never had them involved in any, you know, untoward situation. They have not been in any trouble as such, you know, just the normal stuff.
So you would think the strong parenting structure that you had growing up influence how you manage your children and their development?
Well, I watch my son now who has a daughter, and I commend him the way he deals with his daughter. And I believe he learned a lot from me, not in the sense that it was positive, but some of the things I did wrong.
Learn from your mistakes.
He has corrected, and you know, kudos to him. He has done a fantastic job. She's at Immaculate, doing very well. He's a very dedicated father, and her mother is away, so he does everything. And I remember sitting and talking, and these guys are saying the things I used to rebel, how I handled stuff. You know, from time to time they would tell their friends, boy, my father instilled these things in me. I wanted them to take up the business, but I guess they wanted to do their own stuff, and so Sports Plus suffered along the way.
Would you go back to probably any of your previous positions, probably in management at Waterhouse or at Arnett Gardens?
In this life, never say never. Because you might want something and the Lord wants something different for your life. But from where I sit, I'm not in a position to take up any presidency for any club. I would offer myself, and you don't even have to mention me. I would take
work in the background.
I would work in the background. Everybody seemed to when they come to help, they think they have to be in the forefront and they have to take over. I have lost that passion. I know what it is now to be a servant. I know what it is to support others and just watch things unfold.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Peter Hibbert. Before you go, just give us a word of encouragement for our viewers. You have been through so many situations. Just give a word of encouragement as we go.
I would want to say to my viewers that no matter what in life, keep your focus on the Lord Jesus. I tell people, no amount of wealth, no amount of possession will bring you the peace that sometimes. I chased love all my life, and when I found the Lord, that's when I truly loved.
Thank you for that. We really appreciate you sharing with us today. And thank you, our viewers, for listening to another episode and tuning in another time. We are so happy that you took the time. Before you go, let me remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is TTN on YouTube and also on Facebook. Remember to click the subscribe button and also the notification bell. So until next time, we thank you once more for taking the time out to tune in, and have a blessed week.